Ever since the first Assassin's Creed trailer, it's been a fascinating series for me. While yes, the games themselves have suffered from time to time, I have always enjoyed the story from the human to Isu War all the way up to the modern era and Assassin's Creed Shadows. Shadows doesn't really have a lot of modern era content, but the encrypted data files hint at a broader story that hopefully will be expounded on soon. Contrary to popular belief, the modern story for Assassin's Creed doesn't stop with Desmond Miles, though some of us feel like it probably should have, and the mainline games are not the only Assassin's entries in the series, not by a long shot. Assassin's Creed's spin-off games, comic books, novels, and yes, even the movie, have important tie-ins for the world building and certain time periods not ever showcased in an actual game. I think one very important example I'd like to point out is the Assassin's Creed novel Forsaken by Oliver Bowden. This novel is a companion to Assassin's Creed 3, following the story of Haytham Kenway, how he became a Templar, and what led up to the events in Assassin's Creed 3, as well as important details about what Haytham's time with the Templars was like. This one really sparked my curiosity at first, because I think that Assassin's Creed 3 is a completely underrated gem of a game. The story of Radhon Hatekon, or Connor, is a really interesting historical fiction with some great political commentary on the early years of the American British colonies. The DLC for Assassin's Creed 3 should also absolutely not be slept on. The Tyranny of King Washington is a great alternate timeline wherein George Washington uses an Isu artifact, or Piece of Eden, to become an all-powerful king ruling from atop a giant Illuminati pyramid built by Native American slaves. It's a complete tonal shift from the main game. I think one of my favorite lines in Assassin's Creed 3 actually comes from Sean Hastings, one of Desmond's teammates. He described the American Revolutionary War as Brit-on-Brit action, which it essentially was. The first colonists to come from England to the east coast of North America were all British citizens fleeing religious persecution. Well, not quite. The religious persecution came from the Church of England telling them their religious views were too extreme. Despite this, it's important to remember that the United States itself was not founded by religious Christian fundamentalism. Many of them were deists that did not prescribe to a specific idea of God. Thomas Jefferson famously cut out every single section of magic or miracles from his Bible to try and give a more secular view of Christianity as a whole. The Treaty of Tripoli is another important piece of American history to remember. The treaty states plainly that the United States does not intend to function as a Christian nationalist state, and specifically welcomes Muslims, here called Muslimen, with references to Mahometan nations, which is an older term to mean cultures that practice the religion of Islam. The treaty was signed by President John Adams on June 10th of 1797, only 21 years into the United States' independence. But back to this totally apolitical game franchise. Another novel I had to get into was from the Assassin's Creed Fragments series, specifically The Highland Children, written by Elaine T. Puisegur. Whew! I mean, seriously, have you not been paying attention to this channel at all? An Assassin's Creed story that takes place during the Scottish Rebellion? You absolutely had to have known this was going to come up at some point. And if this is your first video, you should know that historical fiction, comparative mythology, and political intrigue are three of my absolute favorite genres. Mix that with a little bit of fantasy and sci-fi, and you've got just half of what Tales of Atonement is about. So like, subscribe, and keep on watching if that's what you're into. The Highland Children tells a story of two twins named Filion and Alias living in the Scottish Highlands in 1296. Filion and Alias were born and raised in a unique human Isu bloodline from Scotland called the Children of Fal. This group is notable for having a high propensity for producing twins that will be born with the symbol for 2 on the wrist. The Isu symbol for 2. The Children of the Fal were said to be the only ones capable of wielding a special pair of swords created by the Isu called the Swords of Fal. The swords are said to be incredibly light, with gleaming blades marked by a deep gutter that hinted at the core metal that was different from the surface metal. The edge of the blade was thinner than parchment, and the sword's grips were covered in dark straps. The guards were decorated with ornate Celtic interlacing, and the pommels held engravings of the assassin insignia. To me, this sounds very similar to the Children of Danu from Celtic folklore, also known as the Tuatha de Danann. It is said that Danu even made a special sword that could be only wielded by the Tuatha, called the Crave Sholis. Quite literally, a sword of light. Growing up, I had always been fascinated with the idea of an Assassin's Creed story taking place during this pivotal moment in my family's history, and the Highland's Children was a great story. Though we probably won't ever get a game that follows these events, it's good to see that cultures that might be popular but are deeply underrepresented in popular media are getting attention they deserve from clever writers. Following this, I couldn't resist the urge to produce a crossover picture that will put Martin, someone who has a direct bloodline to the Tuatha, and cast him as a potential branch family of the Children of Fal, along with Shane. However, for this image, I'll just be focusing on the one brother. I may or may not do a series on the main trio in Assassin's Creed style, but if I do that, I think I'm going to hold off on Madeline until we know more about Assassin's Creed Hexa, because that will dictate a lot about how I depict her witchery. There are some mentions of druidry in Highland's Children, however. The druidist Moira, not to be confused with the herbalist Moira from Valhalla, was an ally to the Scottish assassins and ended up aiding Filion and Elias in their fight against the Templars, but this just isn't enough for me to go off of in any way I'd want to do it. So focusing on Martin, his story would take place around the same time that he joins the Scottish Rebellion in Monmouth, 1305. This follows the arrest and execution of William Wallace, whom Martin viewed as a hero. In Highland's Children, Wallace was a member of the Assassin's Brotherhood alongside Andrew Murray, trained under a Norwegian assassin named Soren. Actually, it makes perfect sense that Wallace and Murray would be assassins and that King Edward I would be a Templar. Wallace and Murray were Scottish freedom fighters that relied on specific tactics, guerrilla warfare, strategic bottlenecking, tactical retreats, and to some extent, small, fast weapons. One of the most iconic was actually the Scottish Targe. These were small shields that could be used in conjunction with a large two-handed Scottish claymore. The shield had a spike attached that could be removed and stored behind the shield. It was also used as a parrying tool or as a sudden stabbing weapon. Another small weapon that was common among Highlanders was the dirk, kind of like a short sword or a dagger, a little bit too short to be a short sword but a little too long to be called a dagger, with a broad blade that was absolutely effective in battle. Wallace was named the Guardian of Scotland in 1297 after the successful battle at Stirling Bridge. This moment also solidified him as a hero in Martin's mind, and following his execution in 1305, our young hero from Eldon took it as a galvanizing moment against tyranny. "I will not suffer a tyrant in my sight," he would say, while electing to join the Scottish Rebellion alongside Shane, Madeline, Tam, and Brian MacLeod. There is no doubt that Filion and Elias would also be deeply affected by Wallace's death, and their dedication to the Creed would lead them to seek out Scottish soldiers that had joined the rebellion that may be worthy of helping their cause against Templar control, but also to protect them from the Templar hunters that had dedicated themselves to wiping out all the Children of the Fal through the region. If Martin and Shane were Children of the Fal in this parallel universe, it would mean that the Templars would lead Filion and Elias right to them. A crucial event that often gets talked about in Martin's past is the night his camp was raided by a section of British army. Something about the shattering of that sanctity sparked a fierceness in Martin that could no longer be controlled. By that time, he was already known by his fellow rebels to be a fierce fighter. But what happened that night, the blood-drunk rage that burned through the darkness, consumed him completely, saving the camp, but at what cost? Either way, after this, I feel like Filion and Ilias would realize just how dangerous a weapon Martin could be in the wrong hands. They approach diplomatically during his recovery the next day. Ilias connects with Madeline through their shared appreciation of old world magic, while Filion addresses the twins, especially Martin. He revealed the symbol on his wrist, a pair of linked circles identical to the ones found on Martin and Shane. While Shane would find this meeting suspicious, Martin would recognize it as fate. He wants to know more about who these two are, where they came from, and why they have the same hair and eyes as his mother, Cassandra. The Highland twins would explain to all three of them what the Assassin's Brotherhood is, that their purpose is to fight in the dark, to serve the light. A vast network of organizations spread as far across the globe as one could muster, beating back tyranny and oppression brought on by the Templar rule. It would be these same Templar hunters who would have chased Madeline's family from their home in England and drove them all into joining the rebellion in their teen years. Upon returning from war, Filion and Ilias would travel to Alden with the troop to meet Cassandra and ask her questions about her lineage. From there, she could confirm that the oral traditions in her family said something about the Children of the Fal, or Tuatha, and that she always had known that one day her sons might be contacted or found by the Brotherhood. Because of this, she made sure to train them daily, teaching them the basics of defense and combat readiness. Shane, with his cunning and intelligence, offers tricks and know-how necessary to keep the stronger warriors on the battlefield. Madeline's resourcefulness and planning allows her to navigate difficult terrain and stay well out of harm's reach. While Martin, well, he's always preferred a more direct approach. The sword Matthias had, while not truly a Sword of the Fall, is still an Isu artifact given the powerful nature and its meteorite composition. Given this, it still slots very nicely into an Assassin's Creed storyline, while not being a truly marvelous object like the apple from Altair's era. Isu weapons are always considered the most powerful in this particular universe, so it makes Martin a more powerful assassin under the tutelage of Killian. Alden would quickly become recognized as a waypoint for assassins by the Brotherhood, and this economic boost would mean wonders for the little town. Although improvements would be covert to keep from drawing too much attention, not only from the Templars, but Edward's forces. Pat's Forge, Tam's Bakery, and the Campbell Mill would all become important hubs that would see consistent business. Quietly, Alden would flourish under assassin control, becoming a launch pad right outside of a major city like Glasgow, a pivotal point between the Highlands and England's northern push. Would it mean victory for the Scottish Rebellion? Most likely not. Too much of that would change history, but it would mean a foothold to strengthen the assassin presence well into the Jacobite rebellion. I hope we'll see an Assassin's Creed game in Scotland someday. I think at this point it wouldn't make sense to do one during this era, but it might still be possible if Ubisoft digs into the Jacobites. The Jacobites were a group of political revolutionaries active in Scotland during 1688 and 1746. For this to be the case, the Scottish Jacobite game would take place sometime after Assassin's Creed Hexa, but before Assassin's Creed Black Flag. In fact, there's a ship in Black Flag called Jacobite named for this group. When England's pro-Catholic King James II chose exile after the 1688 Glorious Revolution, British Parliament ruled that he had abandoned the English throne, which was given to his Protestant daughter Mary II and her husband William III. The exiled king's followers were known as Jacobites, a term derived from the name James being rendered in Latin as Jacobus. After the War of Spanish Succession and the House of Hanover's ascension to the throne in 1714, the Jacobites began to revolt in Great Britain. Around the same time period, a newspaper article agitated about the increasing number of pirates in Nassau that voiced their support for the exiled James Stewart, publishing reports that the Republic of Pirates had established bonds with the Jacobites in England in order to secure privateer contracts once King George I was overthrown. The pirate Abel Brahma captained a brig named the Jacobite. The Bahamian governor, Woodes Rogers, was suspected to have ties with Jacobites, while in fact he was a member of the Templars' Caribbean Rite. His Grand Master, Laureano de Torre y Alia, asked him to use the Isu blood vials and collect samples of every member of the minister and parliament under the pretext that it was a pledge of fealty to the king against the Jacobites. These events are only ever hinted at in Black Flag, and there's a lot more that could be expounded on in the Jacobite Rebellion and what it means for Scotland. Anybody who knows about this section of history knows about the heavy tensions between Catholics and Protestants in Scotland. This actually refers to the Scottish Reformation in the 1600s, where Scotland broke away from Catholicism and established the Protestant Church. Many lowland Scots were Protestant, and this led to persecution of not only Catholic Scots, the Jacobites, but also Highland barbarous Scots, who were accused of everything from being weak and effeminate to being outright cannibals. Something I referenced in my Attack on Titan video if you haven't seen that one. Oh, a bit more about this image and how it was designed. We don't always use shellac for things outside of canonized images, certainly not crossovers, but the realism style of Assassin's Creed fits exactly with his artwork. And then I talked to him about it, and it turns out he's also an Assassin's Creed fan? It's Kismet! One of the things I fought with myself over when deciding on this image is the position of the hidden blade. Many people are used to the under-the-arm position of the hidden blade. After all, that counts for Altair, Ezio, Connor, even Naoe. However, there are assassins that have worn the hidden blade on the top of the wrist. Ivor from Assassin's Creed Valhalla wore the hidden blade on the top of the wrist, but that's not all. In the DLC for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Legacy of the First Blade, we meet Darius, the original wielder of the iconic assassin weapon. In this story, we see the first blade was designed to fit on the top of Darius's wrist, so it seems like that was the initial, original intention. So what changed it? Well, Darius wasn't an assassin. Not really. The events of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, including Darius' story, take place during the Peloponnesian War, between 431 BCE and 404 BCE. The founding of the Brotherhood didn't take place until Bayek's time, around 35 BCE. Bayek founded the Brotherhood along with his wife Aya of Alexandria. Though he never trained as an assassin, his initial use of the hidden blade on the inside of his wrist resulted in him losing a finger. He turned this mistake into a tradition in the name of sacrifice. Ivor's story, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, takes place in the 9th century, almost 1,000 years after Bayek, but still about 2 centuries before the Lebanese assassins of Masyaf would be formed by Al-Mualim and the events of Assassin's Creed 1. Like Martin, Ivor wasn't born into the Order and doesn't hold their doctrine. While he would be trained by Filion, I think he'd find that being able to use the hidden blade more like a punching dagger would be more beneficial than having it under his hand. Besides, I don't recall Filion or Alias using a hidden blade in the story, and since Soren was a Norwegian mercenary, he might have learned the hidden blade from descendants of Ivor who wore it on the back or outside of the wrist. I chose to add some Celtic designs to the wrist blade and the leather bracers, and the background I made using a real picture of Stirling Bridge. The Battle of Stirling Bridge was one of the most pivotal battles in William Wallace's career. The battle at Stirling Bridge was fought by William Wallace and Andrew Murray, 2 key figures in the First Scottish War of Independence, and people we know for this example were also members of the Assassin Brotherhood. Together they beat the combined forces of the Earl of Surrey and Hugh de Cressingham. The Earl and Cressingham had the combined might of 9,000, while the Scottish forces numbered at only around 5,000 to 6,000. Using the bridge and the difficult terrain to bottleneck and rout the English forces, Scotland dealt a devastating blow, destroying more than half of the combined armies. Oh, right, one final thing. This pattern is based on the Riddell tartan pattern that I discovered online. Although tartans as we know them weren't generally worn the way they are until the Jacobite Rising, and clans weren't formed during Martin's time. Patterned cloths like this were used in Scotland for hundreds of years. So in this case, it's not exactly period accurate, more like it would be seen as an intriguing coincidence. Besides, we know the cover art of the Highland Children that, at the very least, patterns like this were worn by Filion and Alias, so there's that. I hope you like this. I tried to put a lot of thought into it, and my mind just hasn't been working right lately. It feels like I'm burning at both ends again. And this can't be good. I want to thank every one of you once again this week for coming to these ramblings of an anxiety-ridden pyromancer.
And her dragon best friend. We're a small team just doing our best to bring our stories we've loved for decades and hope they're the kind you like too.
With a side info dump of psychology, lore, history, and social awareness.
If this is your first video, we hope you'll stay for another one. And maybe you could consider becoming a subscriber. We'd love to see you again.
Our subscribers can move mountains for a channel like this. The engagement we get just keeps growing each week. You guys are getting the word out and people are listening.
And we really can't express how grateful we are to see our passion project take off. 20 years of love and dedication are here laid bare. Help as much as you care to, but at least watch and talk with us.
Of course, we can't close out a video without giving a shout out to our patrons. Emily Masternardi,
Heinrich 28,
Pammy Poo,
JC Moreland,
Shadow Fox,
Charles Tam,
Arya Gamari,
Lundair Lumen. But also don't forget our channel members, Moose Now,
Jack McLeod,
Plebe 64 Potato,
Lundair Lumen,
7 Stars Sanctuary,
and Chained Furry, Many a Mickle Maximuckle.
See you next week.